Did you know that flamenco artists were touring the world almost 1.5 centuries ago? Did you know that people from outside Spain composed flamenco music in the 19th century? In episode 27 of the podcast Forgotten Sounds of Flamenco, we will review the international diffusion of flamenco in the 19th century, and we will listen to some flamenco sounds very unknown today, composed by musicians outside Spain.
Sounds that once were listened. Sounds that once were enjoyed. Sounds that once were danced. Sounds relegated to oblivion. And yet, there is still something we can do for them. Let us summon them. Let us summon them.
Welcome to the podcast Forgotten Sounds of Flamenco. My name is José Miguel Hernández Jaramillo, and I invite you to enroll in this journey through the sounds, stories, spaces, and people that were part of the 19th century flamenco. Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the second season of the podcast Forgotten Sounds of Flamenco. Thank you again for being there on the other side, listening to stories about the fascinating world of flamenco in its early days, stories that you probably didn't know. You can also listen to sounds that we resist being forgotten. I hope you had a good time during these Christmas days. Let me remind you that you can subscribe to this podcast on leading platforms such as Spotify or iTunes. And if you want to listen to the episodes and watch some of the contents I talk about in them, you can visit the YouTube channel Sonidos Olvidados Etnomusicología Creativa, where you can watch all the episodes released last season. Well, looking for an excellent topic to start this season, I want to talk to you about a phenomenon very unknown in flamenco until recent times. The flamenco at the end of the 19th century became a global art like few others. Even though the evidences, it seems that in the histories of flamenco a very reductionist vision of flamenco continues. By this, I mean that the narrative of the history of flamenco in the 19th century was traditionally restricted to very small geographical areas, including Andalusia and some big cities such as Madrid or Barcelona, and also to very limited scenic spaces, primarily the concert restaurants known in Spain as cafés cantante. We still can hear that flamenco in these times began to become professionalized in the concert restaurants. Of course, there were a significant space for flamenco, but they were not the only ones. We have already seen in this podcast how flamenco was present in countries like the US, in the case of Carmencita or Francisco Amate, or how musicians born outside Spain made excellent flamenco compositions, as we saw with the Hungarian composers Oscar de la China. In addition, many other artists could work in many countries, mainly in Europe and America. I have selected some of the many stories of flamenco artists outside our borders. One that caught my attention when I found in the press was a news from Buenos Aires, where a flamenco company was performing in 1887, apparently with great success, but one of the nights the following happened. I read the news. Even though the reappearance of the Andalusian singing and dancing company in Variedades was not loudly announced, that theater was filled with people, and people were all in good spirits, ready to help the singers in their task. From the first moment, the public joined them and sang without knowing it malagueñas, peteneras, tangos, and soleás, until they got tired. If they did not dance with them, was undoubtedly third police action. On the other hand, it is reprehensible and worthy of police correction that chairs and other props are thrown onto the stage as happened last night, endangering the life of those flamenco artists. Another news that surprised me a lot was the one that narrates the creation of a concert restaurant in Berlin, Germany, in 1895, and with very important artists in the flamenco scene of the time. I will read you the complete news that is great. A group of flamenco guitar players, dancers, and singers has recently been operating in Berlin. The Berlin newspapers devote long chronicles to the works of the artist. The show is new for the Germans, and according to what the newspapers say about the Spanish gypsies, the most pleasing moment is that of the civilian dance performers. The guitar players Francisco Martínez and Rafael Marín are described as notable. The Macarrona, Cotufera, and Las Hijas del Ciego delight the Germans in the flamenco dance numbers they perform. The newspaper covered the Macarrona a lot. In their first performance, the artists presented themselves to the public with fear because they feared that Andalusian dances and songs would not like in Berlin. All journalists and employees of the Spanish embassy and consulate attended the first function. The success was complete. The hall where the artists performed can accommodate 2,500 people. The artists went through many difficulties until they reached Berlin. They had to change trains many times, and since they did not have a translator, it was necessary to communicate with the railroad employees using signs. The artists in this company are the following: Juana Vargas de Macarrona, Antonia Vargas Gitana, Salud y Dolores Las Hijas del Ciego, María de Haro La Cotufera, Antonia García Vargas, Enriqueta Macho, María Bocanegra, Amalia Pimentel, Matilde Prada, Josefa Gallardo, Carmen la del Pichiri, Antonio de la Rosa Pichiri, José Barea, Rafael Marín, Francisco Barberán, Joaquín Rodríguez, Juan Gallardo, and Francisco Martínez. In the Spanish newspaper Blanco y Negro, this concert restaurant is also mentioned in this year and includes a photograph of the complete company members, which you can see in the video of this episode on the YouTube channel Sonidos Olvidados en Musicología Creativa. This news includes more information about this company, such as the idea that they would have a base of operations in Berlin but could perform in other European cities. It also confirmed their success in the German capital by offering 6 daily performances. I read a fragment of the news. The difficulties of the trip were compensated and immediately forgotten by the success achieved by the flamencos in the capital of Germany. The gypsies, as they are called there, are applauded every night and they had to repeat their songs and dances many times to please the public. The theater where the company works has a space for 2,500 people. The performance begins daily at 4 in the afternoon, and the show is divided into 6 one-hour sections at 1 peseta per seat for each section. We can find these flamenco business projects at the same time in several countries, including Mexico and Cuba, where in 1894 it was announced that a show was being prepared with a well-known civilian dancer, although her name was not mentioned. The article Singing and Dancing for Mexico was published in the press and says the following: "A businessman from Mexico tries to exploit this new show for us and probably it will obtain great success." Our correspondent in Madrid dealing with the matter tells us, flamenco singing and dancing in Mexico without a doubt has to cost an absolutely a pro. The businessman is going to earn money in Cuba and in this republic. Among the people who will go to that beautiful country, the main attraction will be the captivating and unrivaled civilian dancer who in Madrid is highly applauded. Well, this was the translation of the news. Indeed, Mexico was one of the countries with a lot of flamenco activity in the last years of the 19th century. In addition to flamenco artistic activity abroad, there were many flamenco musical compositions made by people born outside Spain. We are going to listen to a work by the French composer and pianist Gabriel Ferrari, also known in Spain as Gabriela Ferrari, who in the 1880s published a collection of Spanish songs titled Spanish Melodies as Sung as a Marquis of Altavista, Opus 32. Among which are malagueñas, peteneras, fandangos, nana sevillana, or this polo sevillano, civilian polo, that we are listening to. The researcher María del Coral Morales Villar tells us that the Marquis of Altavilla was a civilian politician and baritone who moved to Paris with the position of superior chief of the Queen to attend the exiled Spanish Queen Elizabeth II. There he met Gabriel Ferrari, who was his piano teacher. She supposedly took up melodies sung by the Marquis of Altavista in this collection from which we have just heard this unknown polo. Here you can see a sample of what I have commented on in previous episodes, how singers who are not necessarily considered as flamenco sings flamenco palos. In this case, the Marquess of Altavista is a baritone. Everything we have seen in this episode invites us to rethink if we should maintain the narrow view we still have of the flamenco in this period. Flamenco was not only sung by flamenco artists in concert restaurants in Andalusia or in the biggest Spanish cities. Flamenco transcended all that and was sung by all kinds of artists in all ethnic space of the time and on several continents. Through this second season, I will continue to comment on more stories about that flamenco that was liked beyond our borders, very similar to what happened today. The proof is the number of listeners following this podcast from many countries. If you like this episode, please share it with your contacts and subscribe if you have not already. As I always say, this action helps a lot to continue this project. I hope you have a great time and see you here in 2 weeks.